morning. Welcome. I have been given the topic of icebreakers for active learning, and I was super excited about that. The former resident advisor in school made me all these balloons popped up. I was afraid I'd float away, and then quickly I pinned that because I teach in an anatomy lab and in a microbiology lab, and there's very few of those same things that I can do in those settings that I would do in a setting where there's not safety concerns. So I won't be doing any trust falls this morning, and I won't be throwing a beach ball at you guys. But I will show you something I do in my classroom that takes about 10 minutes at the start of the semester. It helps me learn all of my students' names, and it also allows me to connect with them on some minor thing, but I promise there's a ton of benefits that come from doing so. So day one, I will put on the board, tell me your name as it appears on my roster, and also your nickname if you have one, and I will use it if it's appropriate. So, I'm not gonna call you Big Daddy or something like that. I've had students tell me that's their nickname, so that doesn't get used. I also have them tell me their program they're in and the reason they're taking my course. This also helps me in gearing up the content for the semester. Obviously it's the same and it's consistent, but I might spend a little bit more discussion on certain topics if I know that they are a majority of which from a certain area, or I've got the 3 dental hygiene students over here, my 2 respiratory therapy over there. That kind of helps me in my presentation for the semester, and also some type of randomized topic of interest. So for instance, it's unique by course. In microbiology, I might have them give me an example of a foodborne illness. Where did it happen, or what did you eat, right? So you'll find a consensus on sushi, or underprepared chicken, or the Chipotle stories. So regardless, you get a nice area then to talk about food safety in your classroom as a result. So it brings up those topics as well. If it's a class where we might not be able to do that, maybe human biology non-majors, I'll have them give me their favorite ice cream flavor or something fun. It gives me an opportunity to check their name off on my roster, so I'm taking attendance for financial aid purposes. It also helps me generate a chart. So I'm literally doing, now granted it's not computerized, it's literally on a piece of paper with circles and bubbles. It's as quick as possible. But I'm also, if I have 2 Kevins or 2 Katies or 5 Amandas, that happened only once, thank goodness. But I can do a last initial or a nickname if they have one. And if their name's really difficult to say, I write it out phonetically in parentheses. So I actually am making an effort in learning their name and saying it the way that they want it pronounced. And then I use that for the semester. I'll write the front of the classroom, I'll write the course and the room number so that I keep track of it, and I keep it in that folder for that course material for the whole semester in the very front. And I bring it back with me to all my courses so that I use it for different things the entire semester. So this would be one of my lab classrooms and where the people would be sitting. As they go table by table and give their spiel of information, I bring it all full circle. By the time we're done, we've got all their names. I've had very few students that like to switch seats every class. We're creatures of habit. We tend to choose the same seat, and the few that move, it makes it really easy to just quickly pencil in that they moved that day, instead of having to just figure it out at random. I've had very few that move. It upsets everybody else. They literally look at them. I've had kids try to beat them to the next class so they can get their first day seat back. That's how much they want that same seat. So it's pretty easy to kind of generate this on the first day, because then you have this idea of who the student is. I can see a student 2 or 3 years later, and I remember what class I had them for and where they sat because of something this simple on the first day. So this would be another classroom kind of example if they're sitting in rows or seats like that. So by week 2, I use my generated map, my little cheat sheet that I've created up in front with me. And granted, I've pretty much learned their names. There might be a random 1 or 2 students that's been very low in participation, so I might need to rely on my sheet to be able to remember their name. But what I do is then when we go over homework or assignment questions or discussion board information, I go table by table. So my first group, I would say, okay, Rogelio's table. Someone at Rogelio's table, answer question 1 for me and what your response would be. This makes Rogelio feel included. gives him a little bit of ownership of his work that he did for homework. But it also allows him to rely on the other people at his table if he's struggling to answer that particular question, if he's feeling really a lot of pressure in answering it, and he starts to learn the other people's names at his table really quickly. So you can say, okay, someone at Rogelio's table, help him out. There's 4 others of you there. So someone else answers and say, great job, Katie, that was a good response, right? And then we go to question 2, table 2, Sarah's table. Next time around, I pick someone else at that table and make that their table. So instead, the next time it's going to be Shelby's table or, Amir's table at the next round, making them take ownership in the class, making them feel included, and kind of semi-forcing the participation. But it does increase homework is handed in because they know they're going to get called on whether or not they brought it that day, because I collected at the beginning of class, so if they didn't have it with them, they're still called on. Their table's still called on. They're still responsible. So by week 3, I have 100% participation on homework. They're intimidated not to. The other is by week 3 then, while they're doing in-class assignments, I remember some of the details from the first day. The program, the interesting ice cream flavor, the favorite pizza topping, the terrible foodborne illness story on their honeymoon, and it creates a way to have a conversation. But it's amazing the types of conversations that stem from this. So there's lots of benefits to this, and I'll give a personal example that happened just yesterday. I was walking out to my car at the end of the day, a different way I normally walk, and I ran into a former student from 3 years ago. And I said hi to her. I remembered her first name. I was like, yes, right? Remembered her first name, remembered where she sat, everything. Said hi to her, and she just burst into tears. Her dad died 3 weeks ago. Her financial aid is a mess right now, dealing with everything. She is supposed to start clinicals on Tuesday for her last semester of nursing. And she opened up to me about what she's going through, and I literally walked her to Melissa Amspa, who's a superhero, who got her everything she needed to be able to start the semester and get her paperwork in as she goes, but bought her 2 weeks to get everything together so that she can start on Tuesday with the rest of her class. And it was amazing because it was serendipity, right? But I remembered her name, thank goodness. Still have my mental faculties intact. And I also was able to take her to the right person. And it made such a difference because that first day I wrote down her name at that middle table in the micro classroom. I remembered who she sat with, but it was something really silly that takes about 10 minutes at the beginning of the semester, but it made all the difference just yesterday. And it does in many other examples, but that's just one. They feel included, they take ownership of their work, and for the most part, the students tend to then feel comfortable approaching you with concerns in your class or with the college or other things that are going on. So it's a great way to do this. It's really simple. And if anyone wants to do a trust fall later, I just started lifting, so we'll see how we do.
Yeah, that was really great stuff, and I definitely look forward to using those techniques, Nancy. Thank you for that.
No problem, Terry.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Thank you. I've been asked to talk about assigning short in-class writings. And I had a professor in grad school, and I'm sure this topic has been written about and talked about in different ways, but I had a professor in grad school who emphasized that we have to be able to convince our students to separate the process of school with the substance of learning. So, the process is you show up at 9 o'clock to hear us talk about this stuff, but the substance is what do we get from it? So this is a not so subtle way to say that what you get from this will largely depend on what you put into it. And what would a chat about in-class writings be without an in-chat writing? So take out a piece of paper and a pen or pencil or crayon, eyeliner, blood, whatever you prefer to write with. All right, so what I would like you to do is take a minute or two to write down some reasons that you might use short writing assignments in class And if you can't think of any, think about the roadblocks to using short in-class writings in your class. Yes. Some reasons why you would use in-class writings in your class, short in-class writing assignments, or roadblocks to using short in-class writing assignments. And I should mention, too, that when I assign short in-class writings, I emphasize to the students that grammar and punctuation won't count against them. So I know that my English faculty colleagues are here, but don't be embarrassed. All right, so let's hear some. Tell us your discipline first, and then what did you come up with? Joanna, thank you.
I like to do in-class writing about the muddiest point of the reading to try to get a sense of where I might want to start the discussion.
Okay, great. So the reason for doing that is?
Well, a lot of students won't say out loud that they were confused by something, but they'll write it, and then I can collect it and take a look at some of the consistencies so that everybody is clear by the end of the class period.
And does anybody else do something similar to that? All right. Yeah, this is actually one of the 4 main points that I came up with, and that's to really stimulate individual reflection. I do something similar to that, and especially around the middle of the semester, I'll ask students, what's going really well in your semester? And they write it, and then I say, what's not going so well? And they write that down too. And then I say, well, what are you going to do for the rest of the semester to address those problems? And so not only are we doing self-reflection, but we're also doing some problem solving through that self-reflection and writing. Great. Let's hear another one. Yeah.
Toby, my area is a little bit different
Yeah.
than counseling because when the student comes in and plays in English 0111, I'm trying to convince them not to take intro to psych because they think psych is easy. And I said, no, you got to have some skills. And so I do my best. So I'm always looking at, where they place, versus, trying to put them into certain classes like psychology, philosophy. It's a lot of work, in those classes. Even biology courses, even the biology 1200, if they don't have the skill level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Great.
So I'm in English, but one of the things I like to use in class writing for is to help students transition to the class they're in and kickstart thinking. But also, if you ask a really open-ended question, it can be a great way for shy students to have a tangible thing to use to respond, which is good because then you can get 100% participation if you just use that all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
I'm going to address one of the classes that I teach nutrition with diet therapy. And I do something similar to Andy with the beginning of class. I want everybody to introduce themselves to each other and to me. And I give them a little bio of who I am. But the one thing is, I ask them is, what do you want to get out of this class besides telling me that you have to take it for nursing?
Right.
I know it's a requirement. I get that. You have to be here because you have to be here. But is there something else of interest to you that I can share with you based on my nutrition knowledge? And then we have a discussion on that.
Yeah, and that's a great way to be nimble to what the students need and address those needs throughout the class. And trust me, us English faculty get, because I have to, a lot. And that, it gives us a little bit of a preview of what we'll have to do to prove to them that this is going to be worth their time and investment. Great, thanks. Jamie.
Jamie, I teach English, but I teach a lot of the developmental English courses. And so sometimes it's not even so much of what I'm asking them to write about, it's just the process of writing, the act of writing. So many of the students who come in there don't think they can write or don't think what they have to say has value. And then they write something and you respond to it and then the wheels start to go in motion.
Yeah, and I think that actually also touches on what Gretchen was saying in getting those students who might not be comfortable speaking out in class to actually have something in front of them, and especially when it's something controversial and everybody's got a really strong opinion about it, but nobody wants to say it. So then I can say, Greg, you wrote something down. What do you have today? And he can go ahead and tell us. What do you have, Greg? I also always look for the people sitting on the outside.
Well, I don't use in-class writing, but you got me thinking about it. And what I thought about in my discipline of criminal justice would be, and I use this verbally, but I could do it as a writing assignment, because I like to ask them, like, what's the Miranda warnings, or your Miranda rights? You know, what are those? And almost no one knows. And then I say, well, why do we call it that? To get them to know that it's the U.S. Supreme Court case Miranda versus Arizona. So I was thinking that's an easy example that I could do, rather than just asking and have them write something.
Right.
But if they don't know, I don't know what they would write.
And I wonder if maybe sometimes a student might think they know, but not want to say it out loud because they don't want to look silly, you know? And you don't even have to have them read it out loud. You could just have them write it, and then maybe it confirms what they think, or makes them realize it's a good idea that they didn't speak out about it.
Another easy one, I say, what's it mean to take the fifth, plead the fifth? I go, what's that mean? And again, I get these blank looks, and I'm like, anybody ever heard of the Fifth Amendment, or the United States Constitution, and the Bill of Rights? And I look at them, and I'm like, I have to start with that. I start with that every semester, because I used to take it for granted that they knew this stuff. And I'm like, you had this in grade school, you had it in high school, right? I mean, how many times have you had this? And I still get an answer, a blank look on their face that they don't know where the Bill of Rights came from, or what is the United States Constitution.
Yeah. Sounds like it'll work for you. Gloria.
So mine is a little different. I'm in intro psych, and when I teach in the bunker, those are really large classes. But one way to, so I don't have them sort of write a narrative, but if we're talking about classical conditioning, which is something that always trips them up, I ask them to write out and label everything in an example of classical conditioning. And what happens is, this was what made me think of it, is what you said, is that you see where they're tripping themselves up. So even if I don't collect or grade them, but they catch their own mistake, and that's really useful.
Yeah, it's enlightening for them and for you, so you know where to direct your attention. Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Gloria. Matt.
I actually start every class with a card. I'm probably the leading user of index cards at the college. I pass out, you get a card on your way in, and they answer the question that's up on the PowerPoint, and sometimes it's a review question from the reading. Sometimes it's a question to get discussion started. Like when I teach the origins of country music, the question is, what's the difference between a hillbilly and a redneck? Because this is important, right? Redneck is a later idea that doesn't come along, and originally country music was hillbilly music. So it's, and we can get into identity and stereotyping and everything else from there. But they write on the question for 5 minutes. It's also a great activity it allows people to be a couple minutes late. It allows me to take attendance without having to call the roll and learn names faster because I have something to give back to them then at every class period. It's a win-win-win.
Excellent.
I don't know who the third win is, but the hillbillies.
Go for it, Doug.
Even though I think the main thing is in engaging the students in the classroom, and that's kind of already been said, what occurred to me when you asked the question is that this can be an important starting point for something that they write later. So especially if you have sort of an open-ended essay assignment, instead of starting from a blank slate, they have a nice little starting point that they can take some confidence from and some ideas from, and they have that artifact to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Any roadblocks? Anyone have any roadblocks? Yeah, all right, there they are. Let's start with Natalie and work our way over.
I mean, it's a simple one and you can work around it, but if you're not used to having students write in the classroom, students take forever to write anything. Like what you think is like, oh, I'm gonna have to write 2 paragraphs, it'll take 5 minutes. It'll take 30. Yeah. Like they take forever. So just like keep it short if you're gonna do it, because that was something I definitely had to learn the hard way.
Definitely, yeah. Go for it.
So to piggyback on that, what's the very first thing I wrote is time for them to write it and then time to review it or go over it. So in teaching labs, because I'm in biology, then sometimes we finish a little early. All right, well, I want you here. I want you to stay so we could do it at the end. It'd be something that would be like a little summary or something.
Yeah, so you had a roadblock and a solution. That's excellent. Yeah. You're making this easy on me. Who else had a hand up over here? Yeah.
The same, it was the time, but sometimes it's more of the panic when they've been asked to write, and you can just see in writing, I have to write right now, and it's like, take a minute or two just to relax, and you don't want that anxiety to build when you're just wanting, to see what they've got going on. But they are slow, and they always ask for more time, even if it's something very basic that you're not collecting, but they seem to have a fear or anxiety about writing.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, one of, as a teacher of our developmental sequence, and even creative writing, which is a different kind of vulnerability, that's one of the biggest obstacles that we have to overcome, is that feeling of self-efficacy. And it goes back to what I think Jamie was saying, is that any response that's an affirmation of what they have just said helps build that self-efficacy. And the more they do it, the more they can be confident in what they have to say and know, hey, I do have a voice that's worth hearing. Thank you. Any other roadblocks?
I was just going to say, part of the solution is to do what you said, give praise, because they're more likely to do it. Another really simple thing is tell them you have 5 minutes, but you've scheduled 10.
Yes.
So then you can be the nice guy and say, well, I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's great. Gretchen?
I don't teach classes like this, but I know a lot of other people in different disciplines have like massive rooms of people, and the grading load for in-class writing can be terrifying. So one strategy to deal with that is to just have them share with a partner, and then have a couple of people share like a smart thing they learned from someone else, and then move on. Because you don't necessarily have to grade every single thing you ask them to write about. If it's a measure of their thinking where they are, then that's good for them, and you don't necessarily have to handle that.
Yeah, great advice. Alex, I saw your hand up.
As far as roadblocks, I guess one of the few that I really struggle with is like everybody answer a question at roughly the same pace, but relating to the time issue, not everybody writes at the same pace. And yeah, some people really do take forever, but some are like remarkably fast. So I find the longer I give them, the more likely it is that I'm going to have half the class like furiously writing and the other half the class like, well, I'm just going to look at my phone now. So that's a struggle. As far as the collecting and grading stuff, I usually just randomize it. I'll make them write, more days than I don't make them write in class, but I only collect about a third of the time. So they never know when I'm going to collect it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But if I do, then I always read it and I always return it.
Yeah, that kind of plays into one of my first points of a reason to do it is to encourage students to complete pre-class assignments or reading or preparation. If they know Professor Cox might or might not have us write about something and collect it, then I better get the reading done, right? Another point that I have that we touched on a little bit, but I didn't address, is to focus student attention on selective information, which is kind of like what Greg was talking about. Or in my creative writing class, we'll talk about the conventions of dialogue, but then I'll ask them to write a scene of dialogue and not use speech tags. So not only do they have to practice the conventions of dialogue, but they're also working on making distinctive characters as well. A third that we did talk about is to stimulate individual reflection and problem solving through writing. And we also talked about that self-efficacy piece and encouraging students to volunteer, because even the shyest students might write. And when it comes to the time issue, this is something that Doug touched on a little bit. Using those writings as a jumping off point for larger discussion is, I think, very useful. And so even if students don't complete their thoughts and they want more time to complete those thoughts, that means they've got them and they really care about them because they want that extra time to put it on paper. Those are the ones we call on, and they'll continue talking. Yes?
Just a thought that when we're asking students to write and then respond and read things out loud, sometimes we find things out about them that maybe they don't want us to know, or it might help us, but that piece, they might be guarding that.
Sure.
This is something we'll find out. Maybe they can't read, maybe they are having trouble writing, but in the big picture, it's something they'll allow us possibly to help to be a positive.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why, too, I'll tell students you don't have to read it directly off of there. You know, just tell us what the gist of what you're writing about. Jeanette?
It goes back to randomization, is that you could also do randomization where you offer the students X number of times during the semester you need to be submitting the whatever the assignment is that you ask them to do. And it's sometimes you might have a student who they've done it every single time but the time you ask for it, and so it allows them to get credit for what they've been doing. And you don't have to grade a lot of the responses that are just nonsense where they didn't know what they were going to say.
Well, I'm just about out of time here. I just want to let you know that last semester, our Writing Across the Curriculum Committee began working on a shared folder for resources for every discipline when it comes to writing assignments. Be on the lookout for that. Hopefully, we'll complete that project this semester. If not, then we'll do it by the spring. And thank you all for carrying the load for me. I appreciate your time and attention.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jen Barr, and I'm the director of the Dental Hygiene Program. My topic this morning focuses around demonstration and learning through experience, as well as learning through reflection on those experiences. One way we do that in allied health is through our interprofessional education projects. So you may be familiar with the projects already. We've been doing them since 2015. We started in 15 with 8 students in a pilot group, and we now have nearly 200 students that participate in our capstone seminar, which is what I have up. The purpose of the projects is to bring students from different disciplines together to reflect on their clinical and academic experiences as they work through a case study together. They have the opportunity to learn from and with each other and gain an understanding of the different roles in healthcare. Currently, we have 14 participating programs. Obviously, many of those are allied health, but we do have Alice Walker in Human Services that participates with us, and we also have physician assistant students from Lake Erie College that are part of the projects. We hold a first and a second year seminar. This allows the students to see how far they've come in just really 2 short years with us, but it also kind of shows them how their clinical experiences change their perspectives on patient care and IPE. So just in case you aren't familiar, I wanted to quickly explain what interprofessional education is. IPE is a growing trend in healthcare. It's come about really for a number of reasons, but one of the chief reasons was to reduce medical errors and increase patient safety. So this is done through a focus on interprofessional communication, mutual respect, and the understanding of each other's roles in healthcare. This allows us to work together in patient care instead of sort of in these separate silos where we may not really understand the implication of another provider's care or how what we're doing could impact what that provider would need to do in the future. So the Capstone project is what I'm going to talk about, the second year project. It really has evolved over the years, but it has always focused on a patient case study. So this year we worked with Phil Boyle. Sam was actually out at the time when we were doing this, but we created a video which I'm going to show at the end. Just the act of making the video itself was interprofessional because we worked with students, alumni, and faculty from across the campus, as well as from Lake Erie. And actually, Doug Webb was our narrator for the project. So what we have found actually doing these is that it's really not just interprofessional for our students, it's interprofessional for us as faculty as well. So we have learned so much about and from each other in doing this. You know, when I started, I did not know what an MLT was. I'm guessing maybe I'm not the only one, what an HIMT or an OTA was. But in doing this, we've learned how we all connect together. So for the format of our project, we place students in groups of 8 with a representative from each discipline in each group in as much as possible, right? Some programs are smaller than others, but we do our best to be equitable in that distribution. Each group has a faculty facilitator. We show a segment of our video, and then the facilitator will pose some discussion questions. We really, at that point, ask the facilitator to just kind of sit back and let the students lead the discussion. We want them to have the opportunity to shine as the experts in their field and to be able to share their body of knowledge and experience with their peers. We do give our facilitators some prompts just in case the group is quiet or a critical point is left out. But our discussion questions, they're very broad and they focus around these bigger goals of IPE so that everybody can participate even if they didn't see their role on the video segment. So we might ask things like, hey, in this situation, how would you communicate? Or where you work, even if it's not healthcare, have you ever seen a breakdown in communication? Or maybe have you ever felt intimidated talking to another provider in your clinicals or something like that? So the students, we have found, really enjoy the opportunity to share their clinical experience. The project, and I think the LOAC people could probably attest to this, is part of, we use this as our assessment in allied health this year for Learns Actively. There's so much energy and excitement and buzz in the room when you are there because the students, again, they are the experts and they're shining and they get to share all of this knowledge and experience. So the addition of the video really made a difference in the project this year. Students could see an actual demonstration of skills and really see what their peers are doing instead of just hearing about it while they're talking. They also get to explain, when their person is up, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is what that means and this is how that might affect that patient. So the project as it stands now is really the closest thing we have to an immersive experience in which all of our allied health and other students can work together on a patient case. Give students the opportunity, again, to reflect on those clinical experiences so far and to communicate with their patients in healthcare. We hope that they'll take these experiences with them into their future roles and that it'll help break down some of the barriers to communicating and, again, that mutual respect that we're looking for. We at Lakeland feel like it gives our students an edge when they get out there because they've learned how to communicate with others. They have an understanding of their own role in this bigger healthcare picture, and they have an idea of, hey, I might need to talk to this person in the future, or if this issue comes up, maybe I need to collaborate with that person. So ultimately, our hope is that this is going to translate into more comprehensive care, fewer medical areas in our area and beyond. So I'm going to show the video now. I will tell you this video is very near and dear to my heart. There are so many hours that went into this video and it's excellent. And it's 15 minutes long. So I asked, not today, but I asked Sam to put some excerpts together for me and it was so hard to figure out who to cut. So it's a little bit long. I'm gonna skip a little bit during the video. So if you notice me doing that, it's just to save on time. But without further ado, our video. You may also recognize our patient, Larry Lakes.
This is a right-handed 73-year-old man who lives with his wife in a 2-story home on a wooded property in rural Lake County. He's a retired auto mechanic and has a high school education. He and his wife have 3 adult children and 7 grandchildren. His hobbies include fishing, traveling, working on his car, and attending local sporting events.
Honey,
Yes.
I'm having a lot of trouble breathing.
How bad?
Pretty bad.
Do you think I should
Like
need to
last
call the
night,
doctor?
yeah, you need to call 911.
Okay.
EMS was called to the Lakes residence due to Mr. Lake's shortness of breath.
Hey, sir. My name is Joe. I'm with Lakeland EMS. What seems to be the problem today?
Having trouble breathing.
Okay. I'm gonna get some.
Just started a little bit ago.
Started a little bit ago? All right. I'm gonna get some vital signs on you right now. See what's going on.
In the paper, and just started having trouble breathing.
Found to be in respiratory distress. He also described tightness in his chest. Oxygen via nasal cannula was given with improvement, and Mr. Lakes was prepped for transport to the hospital ED.
This is Mr. Lakes. He's 74 years old, coming from home. He's experienced shortness of breath. Pulse ox was 89%, but with oxygen via nasal cannula, we got up to 99%. Lower lung sounds were
taking care of you. So Connie's looking at your vital signs. We're going to check an EKG. We already have you on the cardiac monitor.
His heart rate's been a little bit higher since he's come in, and his blood pressure's just been a little bit lower as well.
I want to take a listen to your heart and lungs, and I know you just had an amputation on your right foot. I want to take a look at that wound.
The radiology technologist was called to get a chest and a foot x-ray, and phlebotomy was called for the initial blood draws. Mr. Lake's chest pain persisted, and he experienced a cardiac arrest, and a code blue was called. The physician assistant led the code, along with nursing and respiratory therapy, as Mr. Lakes required intubation and mechanical ventilation.
Okay, Stephanie, drop 1 milligram of epinephrine. Let's get a pulse check.
No pulse detected.
Gonna analyze the rhythm. He's in VTAC, all clear. Shock delivered. We need respiratory.
I can help you.
Matt, we need you to intubate him, he's coding.
Absolutely, I'll be right back.
Let me know when you're in.
Have a visual of the vocal cords.
Mr. Lake's non-healing foot wound from his previous amputation was addressed, as it was now draining green, purulent material. He was started on antibiotics and cultures of the drainage were taken.
Hey Rance, I have that stat on Larry Lakes. We need a BNP, a CMP, troponin, and a myoglobin.
All right, Kathy, I'll put you on the list right away.
A dental consultation was ordered to determine Mr. Lake's oral health status and the impact that it might have on his diabetes. The hospital dentist diagnosed Mr. Lakes with type 3 moderate periodontitis. Mr. Lakes then saw the hospital dental hygienist for quadrant scaling and root planing.
Hi, Mr. Lakes. I'm Loretta. I'll be your dental hygienist today. As Dr. Jones recommended, we're going to scale and root plane to remove the bacteria from underneath your gums. This will help heal the inflammation and the periodontal disease and prevent it from spreading to other parts of your body, like your heart. I'm going to numb your tissues before we begin to keep you comfortable.
On the day of Mr. Lake's procedure, a surgical technologist prepared the theater and completed the instrument counts.
Nina, you ready to count?
Let's do it. Okay, want to start with mosquitoes?
So mosquitoes, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Cryos, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Ring forcep, 1, 2.
Okay.
This is Larry Lakes, date of birth 7/1/45, 73-year-old male with a previous forefoot amputation that has become infected. His past medical history is positive for coronary artery disease with a previous CABG, peripheral vascular disease, type 2 diabetes, renal failure, and peripheral neuropathy. And we scheduled a below-the-knee amputation of his right leg. He has no allergies, and we have ordered preoperative antibiotics.
As Larry Lakes transitions to a rehabilitation hospital, health information management professionals work to confirm the procedures and diagnoses Mr. Lakes received during his stay.
Hi, Rebecca.
Oh, hi, Chris.
Administration's calling me. Want to know why Larry Lake's chart has not been billed? Well, I'm waiting on documentation from the physician. He had a positive sputum culture, and I've sent the physician 3 queries, but I haven't heard back yet.
Who's the doc?
Transportation assistance. They also reviewed the medical discharge plan and together developed a service plan that included a home safety and accessibility review, options for smoking cessation, vision assessment for Mrs. Lakes, and a psychosocial evaluation to explore supports for social and emotional health.
So let's do this. The next time I come, I'll bring a variety of options for the smoking cessation so that you can take a look at those. And I'll bring some information about the various services we have for shopping and housekeeping that might be helpful for you. And we can take a look at some events that you might like to go to in the near future.
Eddie when it came to transfers to and from the wheelchair. Mrs. Lakes privately expressed her concerns for transporting and assisting her husband in the home.
One of the last things we're going to do is we're going to reach into the refrigerator in case you need to get yourself a drink or a snack while she's not here to make sure that you're safe and balanced and doing that. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right.
I'm ready for a drink.
You're ready for a drink? All right.
We were all ready for a drink by the time we were done filming that, let me tell you. That's it. That's our video. Like I said, in its entirety, it's about 15 minutes long. We're so proud of it. We think it turned out really well. And again, we just want to thank Doug because he spent so much time learning medical terminology. Definitely more than he ever expected, I'm sure. But that's it. That's all I have.
So I hope that all of you are enjoying conference week, fall conference week. I am. Thank you, all of you who put this together. I know there's been a lot of people. And just to apologize for not sitting up front with the panel, this morning I was getting fingerprinted. So my children's school, I'm working with a group there with marching band, and I had to get fingerprinted. And it turns out that if you're doing construction, gardening, dishes, and laundry, you remove all your fingerprints, which is all I did all summer. I didn't teach summer school. So if you want to commit a crime, do lots of that kind of work, because it took them 15 minutes to find my fingerprints. So that was pushing us a little bit late. All right, I'm going to spend about 15 minutes here talking about active learning using video vignettes. And there's a lot of material out there, as you all know. So one of the things that happens in a classroom is how do we kind of cull through the material and find the information that's really useful for our students. And since I've been doing this a long time, my kids claim that when I first started working at Lakeland, I rode a dinosaur to work. Yeah, well, they're 15 through 21. What do they know, right? I'm really old. But they actually used to come with me in their little car seats and their little stroller, and they were on campus a lot. So one of the things that's happened over the years is I've used information I've gathered from different sources over the last 18 to 20 years and put those together, kind of my video library. I'm sure a lot of you have that as well. But one of the reasons I do that is to get this critical thinking and active learning engaged with the students. So what is critical thinking? Going back to Foundation for Critical Thinking, it's the disciplined process of conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and/or evaluating information. And where do we get the information? We gather it from, or we generate it by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication. And for a lot of our students, they have great knowledge, they have great information. And then for some of our other students, I don't think they've been out of Lake County. Do you find that? I mean, really, they've been on their phone. They've been playing Fortnite and doing their Snapchat streaks. Yes. Does anyone have Snapchat streaks in their family? My kids have like a 3-year Snapchat streak. I'm really embarrassed to say that. Like, your kids are getting scholarships. My kids have Snapchat streaks. So I'm really sorry. That's kind of where we are. But the point is that because of the technology and everything that we're competing against, I actually find that videos help to increase active learning and increase critical thinking, because this is a medium that our children and students can understand. Every morning I watch the news for at least 15 minutes. My children go to their phone to get their news. They'll sit in the room and maybe glance up at the news occasionally, but this is where they're going for their news. So I think anything that's in that video concept that we can package and put together for them really helps bring them into this critical thinking process. And actually, last night, as I was preparing my presentation, my son wanted to borrow my car because he's moving all his stuff to Akron and going to school there next week, hopefully, if he gets registered for all his classes. Anyway, so as he was talking to me and picking me up so he could borrow my Suburban and put all his stuff in it, we were talking about Oreos. As some of you know, I use Oreos in the classroom. I bring in the first week Oreos versus the Target brand, and we do an analysis and a comparison because you can tell a difference. How many people can tell a difference between, see, half of you can. How many of you just don't care? There's that group out there. I feel very sorry for you, actually, because you don't understand how important the difference is. So one of the things that we laugh about in my family is the fact that if I bring home extra Oreos from my classroom example, they're gone within about 5 minutes. And the kids will actually take them all out of the package, they put them on the island in the kitchen, and they divide them up in 4 equal piles. Right, okay, and if you're not there, then it's only 3 piles or 2 piles. So really, that's, yeah. So with the Oreos, we talk about Oreos, we compare Oreos, we analyze Oreos, and we really can get into the situation of what happens if you leave Oreos out on your desk, at home, on the kitchen, and we can talk about this critical thinking: where, who, what, how, when, why. If there's a 2-year-old Labrador Retriever at your house, how long will the Oreos last? Not very long. even if you put them on top of the fridge. Our lab has figured out how to get on top of the fridge sometimes. So those are some of the things that lead to critical thinking. And if we put critical thinking in a fun setting like Oreos, then it engages the students and brings them in. It doesn't scare them quite as much. And also, how do we create scenarios like this? Well, experiences, so like the lab experiences that we see in health sciences. Field trips, internships, shared stories and examples, which Tobin was talking about, those kinds of things, and also bringing in the videos. The other thing with video is, you may not realize this, but the whole learning process, the neural pathways are actually stimulated by emotion, by the 5 senses. So if you can taste, touch, smell, look at something, handle it, listen to it, the opening of the wrapper, I really think our dogs can do like that as a trigger. Does anyone else have that in their house? The dogs are triggered, and I think all of us humans are too. You know, if someone's pouring you a glass of wine and you've had a long day, that's a good trigger. So all of these kinds of things we can actually do in the classroom. And they're not very difficult, not very expensive. I probably spend $10 or $15 a semester on Oreos, and the students remember it forever. I'll see someone 10 years ago, they were my student, and they go, you had the Oreos. So it's just a little thing that makes a big difference. All these hands-on shared experiences. The emotional attachment also with video, a lot of times you can bring out emotion, laugh, cry, sadness, empathy. And so sometimes if a student hasn't been outside of Lake County or they haven't experienced a lot of things, the videos can help them experience something and feel that. So here's some of my favorites, and I'm going to ask for a couple people to help me with this. Who's really good at making paper airplanes? Raise your hand. Don't be embarrassed. Who's really good? Okay, come on up. All right, come here. So you have 30 seconds to make a paper airplane.
Does it start now?
I only have 11 minutes or 9.5 minutes, so go fast. Okay, so one of the things I do in my class is we talk about production and operations management in business, and we could sit around and talk all day about, whatever. Dan knows all this, ISO and all the whatever. So anyway, unfortunately, that is not my area of expertise. It is his. They get a really, really different presentation in his class. In my class, we talk about quality control and how good is your paper airplane. So my son said that his engineering professor at Akron did this, so I think his engineering professor stole it from me. I'm going to trademark it. So what you do is you have them take scrap paper, so it doesn't cost anything. You have them make airplanes, and then you stand at the front of the classroom and you have them throw the plane at you. And if they hit you, they get 1 bonus point. Okay. It's harder than it looks. Okay, ready?
This is an MBA thing.
You can do this.
You learned this in MBA.
I invented this. Come on. How many? Okay. Go ahead. Just go for it. Oh. Okay. Come on. We got this? Okay. Ready? Okay. Very good. Okay. So, with free scrap paper, in about 3 minutes, I let them use their phones and they can Google how to make the perfect airplane. And you take paper clips and tape, because some of the recipes for paper airplanes call for paper and tape. I also show them a short video. This is actually the world record holder for paper airplanes. And the guy in the blue shirt is the guy who actually invented the formula. There's a certain way to cut the paper a little bit smaller than 8.5 by 11. He invented it. He's trademarked it. He's written all these books and made millions off selling the books. He's invented like 20 different kinds of paper airplanes. And then the guy in the red shirt is actually a football quarterback who is the pilot, and he throws planes. So I'll show the video. It's 2 minutes. It's really easy, and the students love it. And they remember, oh, production engineering, if you don't make your plane right, then it crashes, and I didn't get any bonus points. Okay, another favorite, Oreos, going back to those. Oreos always has lots of great videos. For example, right now they have one with Wiz Khalifa. So if you haven't seen it, go take a look. And it's about a minute long, and he's dancing around with his son and talking about how you make memories when you share food together, and Oreos are a great way to share food. So again, this kind of crosses a lot of genres. I don't know any Wiz Khalifa songs, I have to admit it, but I know who he is, and I can talk about him in class and kind of relate to students with that. Another favorite is Zappos. Anyone use Zappos to order shoes, clothes, anything? Yeah. My family has these really wide feet. We call them brick feet. So if you have brick feet, you can order them from Zappos.com. really wide shoes. And it's a family problem. It's both sides of the family. So one of the things with Zappos is that they have this very cool corporate culture. They're celebrating their 20th anniversary, and there's lots of information out there on them. One of my favorite videos is actually this one, which is from 10 years ago when they were first really hitting the map as far as changing corporate culture. They actually teach corporate training now, based on how innovative their corporate culture is. They give every employee free snacks, free meals, they have a nap room, everybody has a cubicle, nobody has an office with doors on it. They're just a really cool place to work. So they have lots of really fundamental ideas about treating people right, building open relationships. And so this is a great video that I can show and then piggyback on these concepts for management. Another one, Legos. So I also bring Legos to my class. I don't know about you guys, but I've spent $10,000 on Legos, so I might as well get my money back on them. So I bring in a bin of Legos, and we put together a business, and we talk about starting our business, sole proprietorship, and then forming a partnership, and then forming a corporation. And part of that is we watch a little clip of the Lego movie, and then we talk about how Legos has grown from a sole proprietorship. A guy had a carpentry shop in Denmark, and now the company is privately held and worth like $100 billion. Like, yeah. So you need to marry into this family. But anyway, the other point with this is that the whole idea of corporate structure, how they've built their brand, they reinvented themselves several times. Lego actually almost died in the late 90s. Does anybody know why? Video games. Video games almost killed Legos. And what did Lego do to innovate and change? They got into video games, exactly. So they trademarked every video game out there, every television show, SpongeBob, Star Wars, you name it. So that's an example that they can relate to. We actually build the Legos. We make little sculptures out of them while we're talking about building your business. On more serious topics, videos can relate to these more difficult topics. So one of the videos that I use is about 10 minutes long. If any of you heard of Jane Elliott in the 1960s, she did a classroom experiment in Iowa where she had students wear collars, and she separated them into blue versus brown eyes. I personally have green eyes, so I'm a little offended by this, but I do make sure that I have the students separate out. So we'll have one group of brown eyes, we'll have the group of blue eyes, and then green, gray, you know, whoever sits in the middle. And we can use this video to talk about power, because that's really what all of this question about gender, race, background, everything is about. It's about power. And we can also talk about that related to management, and we can talk about the fact that even these little second graders were feeling what it was like to have power or not to have power, and how important that is in the workplace as we are managers. History, there's a lot of great history videos, very short, 3 to 5 minutes. Things like the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, where over 100 women were killed in about 10 or 15 minutes in a fire before unions came in. Things like the Carnegie and the Homestead strike, and also talking about things like Labor Day. And then finally, one of my favorite videos to show in ethics class is actually Erin Brockovich. So again, I have these students who have a lot of great experience, but they may not have, well, I'm not really good with technology either. I'm just going to admit that. Technology and I don't always get along. So one of the things I'll do is I will show this in my ethics class. There's some very touching scenes in this where she talks about the fact that people who have been affected by the case that she's investigating, PG&E polluted the water, they have a hysterectomy, they had their spine collapse, they had their bones collapse. You know, there's different things that can really, really be impactful for the students. And I have watched this 42 times, so if you need to know a line from it or a scene, I can help you out with that. Final thoughts on this, I think that our creativity is limitless, and that's one of the things that I'm really conscious of. Sometimes I'm the loudest person in the room, which is not a good thing. But I also think that creativity is vital, and everybody has it inside of them, but it might have just gotten stuffed down. You know, I think every one of you is really creative, even if you don't express it all the time. And I think that creativity feeds our critical thinking. So if we do use these 5 senses, I think we do create these neural pathways. We help our students with their memory, their analysis, their comparison, their decision making. I think the emotion does build the memory triggers. I've had students say to me after watching Erin Brockovich, gosh, I never thought about And then they'll talk about, oh, Flint, the water is bad in Flint. You know, Newark, New Jersey, the water's bad in Newark, New Jersey. So all of a sudden, we can relate that to current things that are happening in the news, and they can see those examples. And then finally, it can build on the previous knowledge, and it can give you a platform for these talking points, especially if they're difficult talking points, and kind of get you started with that conversation. All right, any questions or any comments about videos? What are you using that you really like in your classroom that has to do with videos? Marty?
I use a TED Talk by Dan Brooklyn, the inventor of the spreadsheet. And what's nice about that is it gives a history of computers also, indirectly. So I stop it every now and then, and it shows the Apple, and it shows how this had like 25 kilobytes, and the Apple had about 300 kilobytes of memory and RAM. And then at the end, it's very nice because it says, basically at the end, he says, if you have a dream and you have, you know, a vision, chase it. And that's his final, like, 15 or 20 seconds is go for it. And then the other thing is just how he had he keeps talking about his vision and the perfect storm of how it falls. And our whole spreadsheets are based on what this guy did 30 years ago. You asked me personally, it's one of the top 10 inventions ever made.
Very cool.
And so it's just great history.
Yeah. How long is the video?
About 12 or 13
Yeah.
minutes.
So
it's a bite-sized chunk, too.
Right. So how long is everyone's attention span to watch something or participate? Do you know how long that is? It's about 12 minutes, actually, which is the segment size for a SpongeBob episode. I don't know if you knew that, but years and years ago when they did research in television, they realized that the average attention span for watching something is about 12 minutes, and that's why you have a commercial break every 12 minutes. So.
Which is why I also stop it here and there.
Yeah, discuss it. Yeah. Yep, exactly. And yes, I have seen all the SpongeBob episodes, so if you need, like 5 times, so if you need any of those, either, just let me know. All right, any other questions, comments? Wonderful, thank you so much.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Wintrick with the Criminal Justice Program, and I'm going to talk to you about a problem-based learning exercise that I do with my criminal investigation class. So I have them solve a murder, and it's a lot of fun. If you're not familiar, here's the official definition of problem-based learning, but essentially you're teaching the subject by presenting a problem to the students. So the problem drives the learning. They can be complex, and they should be as complex as possible, but they could be semester long, they could be very short. They should be open-ended. There should be multiple ways to solve the problem. It was a learning technique that was developed in the 1950s in medical school, and really has kind of caught on lately. In law enforcement, we don't use them as we should. When I learned how to be a criminal investigator, I went to a real crime and started investigating it. And if you make mistakes there are problems. So this is a great exercise in fields that are similar to law enforcement. What we want to try to do is make them understand what the problem is, to define the problem, and then they want to find all the tools necessary to solve that problem. So usually we do this in small groups. And I wanted to just show you this link. This is a great resource for each discipline to look for ideas. If you go to this website, which I have on your handout, you can see by discipline there are already hundreds of entries for each discipline. Now, in my case, I use real-life crimes that I investigated. So I used different parts of different homicides, and I put them together to try to challenge the students. Just quickly to go through this, we want them to understand what they don't know and go find what they need to know. One of the big issues with problem-based learning is having them solve the problem, but then report their findings. So a big part of my exercise is that they issue a report, a police report, and then they have to present their case to the class and to me as if I'm a prosecutor. The standard practice, if you can do it, is to find subject matter experts to come in and review those projects. But that's the ultimate goal here. Now, before I get into the project, just a couple challenges. You do give up some control of this. You're not sitting and watching the students every minute. That you give them the ability to work problems and fail and continue. And there's a lot of front-end work in creating the problem. It took me a long time to put everything together and to make sure that it was structured. I have groups that work together, and there are always problems with groups, and I'm sure you guys have dealt with that. I recently found a group contract or a group agreement, and so I'm going to have my groups now sit down together and fill out that group contract where it says this is how we're going to communicate. If there's a problem, this is how we're going to deal with it. These are the expectations of each member. So that was I had a problem with one group in the past and had to get involved. Usually I try to stay out of that and let them deal with it because in real life, obviously they're going to have group problems. In my scenario, there are team leaders, there are detective sergeants. Each the groups are broken up into detective squads, and there's a detective sergeant. And so picking that team leader is really important. I try to pick someone that I know and have had in class before, but sometimes that's a challenge. And then I'm the lieutenant, so they all report to me. So this teaches them the chain of command. I think I'm going to make myself a captain this coming up. So. Another challenge is role players, finding role players. I have some good ones, but if you're interested, please see me. But it's hard to get people to put time into this. And then finally, you have to have different problems in different scenarios because our students talk, right? And so I have different homicides with different results. So here's the problem. There's been a murder on campus, and your group is tasked with solving that murder. Not only do you have to identify the killer, but you have to have enough evidence to lead to an arrest, which is really important. They can give me a name, but they need to have evidence, and that's real life. You have to have probable cause to arrest someone. So I want to introduce you to the killer, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but he's one of us. He is considered armed and dangerous. Yeah, it is pick on Greg, and I didn't know that. So I've gone up against a lot of criminals in my career, but nothing like this, right? So Greg plays an important part. In the one scenario, he is the killer, and they have to identify him. And to begin with, most of the students think that I'm the killer. They think it's going to be that easy. They all pick me at the beginning. So here's Johnny. He's another important person. Now, I had to give him a name. His name is Johnny B. Dead. Why did I have to give him a name? Does anyone know? Why is it important in a real investigation to identify the victim? I know you guys watch Criminal Minds. Why is it important? This is an important step. So I leave a wallet at the crime scene with an ID so they can figure out who the person is. This is Johnny B. Dead. Yeah.
To make it real, to make it.
Yeah.
He's human.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Life.
Follow the lead.
Yes. Very good. So our starting point in a real investigation is 90% of the time, 80% of the time, the killer is known to the victim, usually an intimate partner, but someone known to them. So we need to find out who they are and then find out who's close to them. And so this is a beginning step. So I had to create a driver's license there and come up with a name that they couldn't find online. If I gave John Smith, they're gonna find John Smith's online and get very confused. But Johnny's a forensic mannequin that I bought with a faculty challenge grant, and he comes with wound pathology kit that I can create ligature marks and gunshot wounds, and I make it as realistic as possible. In the old days, I'd have to just tell them that there's a body here. It was horrible, right? So Johnny unfortunately dies many different ways every semester. There he is, poor Johnny. He comes back to life, don't worry about it. That doesn't happen in real life. Here's Johnny again in another scenario. He's sitting down at a desk. This is a drug-related homicide, which is very common, so I incorporate that in here. He's been shot twice in the head. If you can see, those wounds simulate a close contact gunshot wound for the students, and that's a part of this. And now there's all kinds of evidence there that they will collect. So the first week, I divide them up into groups, and then I spend about a month and a half lecturing them and discussing investigative techniques. I show them some of my cases that I've worked, and then after that month and a half, I stage the crime scene with Johnny, and that's their starting point. They have until the end of the semester to identify the killer and gather that evidence. So there are little clues here that help them, and they should know some things at this point where to look. So they're generating leads just like in a real case. So an example would be at the top left there. It's a drug-related homicide, so there are some baggies with some suspected heroin in there. They're going to submit this evidence to a crime lab. They're going to get a crime lab report back that I will issue to them. They're going to look for fingerprints or DNA, and you'll see a report like that. He also has a book bag, and in that book bag are computer textbooks, and that's going to make them start looking for a possible connection to the computer science department, or that he's taking computer science classes. And then in that book, I'm not sure that you can see it, but there's some notes that I wrote out. The far left is just kind of a red herring. There's a lot of red herrings, which is, in real life, we follow leads and they just go dead all the time. So that's just a textbook, and it talks about the bookstore. So they go to the bookstore and ask about this, and they ask for surveillance video from the bookstore. They try to follow up that lead. In the middle there's initials that says FC, and then I have a phone number. I don't have an area code there, and that's purpose, so that they can't figure out this phone number, but they should want to subpoena this phone number, right? And gather who owns this. And one group actually looked up on Google 440-534-1129, and they found a guy living in Willoughby, and they wanted to go interview him. I'm like, no. So the way I control what they do, because I don't want them going up to Morris and saying, we'd like to interview you about the homicide on campus, right? So whatever they want to do, they have to run it through me as the lieutenant. And so I authorized them to go do this, and I said, no, you can't talk to that guy. Good job, but you can't. And then finally, a really important clue, you see BG and then 7282, that's Becky Grasser and her extension. She's a key role player, and if they get to her, she's going to try to get them to Greg a little bit. But it takes them a long time to figure out that that's an extension here at the college, but all groups eventually figured it out. It's really fun. So we saw the therapy apartment in the previous video. This is a tremendous resource. I had to usually use the classroom, but Deb mentioned, hey, we have this new apartment, and it's very realistic. So Barry has allowed me to use the apartment. So a lot of things happen in there. Guys are having heart attacks, they're dying. So this is you should see these students when they prepare to go in here. They're excited and they're nervous. They're like ready to just pass out, that they're so excited and they think it's as real as possible. So there's Johnny. He's been shot 3 times in the chest here. Unfortunately, he's got some duct tape on him. All physical evidence possibilities. Now here's an example of the students at work, and I'm kind of in the background there watching them and evaluating them. I don't talk to them or help them through this, but if you removed me and I just showed this to some of my colleagues, and maybe these students were dressed a little bit differently, they would think that these are real criminal investigators. They're, the 2 at the table are talking about what to collect and what's important. You have one taking photographs and measuring things, and this is fun to watch them work through this. Here's, yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
So let's say I have 4 groups. One group's working in there at a time. What
Yes.
are the other groups doing?
They're preparing to go. I do them on different days. They're preparing to go.
Okay.
And then, so I do 2 groups a day. So one group will go, then the next group, and then the next class period, the other 2 will go. It's the same crime scene though. It's set up the same way.
I can understand that. I just,
Yeah,
not everybody's in there at once.
they're getting ready. They're just planning.
Or deconstructing if they were.
Yes, if they've gone already, then they're starting to work on their investigation. This starts the investigation.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
You have to replant the evidence.
Yes, and I take photographs so I know where everything is and put it back down. Yes, it is time consuming. It is, but yes.
Are they allowed re-entry?
They are in certain instances. And in one scenario, I hide a piece of evidence. I hide latex gloves in the classroom, and they shouldn't find it. If anyone ever finds it, I'll be amazed. But later on in the semester, there's a surveillance camera, a fake surveillance camera in this classroom. They should be able to see that and ask for that video. And if they ask for that video, I actually filmed a video of me committing the murder, taking the gloves off, and hiding them. And so in that case, they know they need to go back to get those gloves, and I allow them to do that. Yeah, I'm strange. Yes. Another example of the students working together, just like a real investigation. So here's some of the reports that I will issue. So if they wanted to analyze those baggies or the cups that are there and they ask for fingerprints and DNA analysis, I give them a lab report. And this is a real lab report from my agency. It's same language, and they get to analyze it and understand what it's about. And most of the time, they don't get any fingerprints or DNA off the evidence, which is real life. It's not TV, right? If they'll ask for Johnny's class schedule or his grades, and I give them this. And if they can look at this closely, they'll see that he was doing really well. And then at a certain point, he started flunking out, and they should want to know why and want to interview some of the professors. And then finally, another example, the cell phone is really important, so they're going to want to look at who's calling Johnny on his cell phone. I'll give him this report. And on this one, this is a clue to help direct them to Greg and Becky. And the report says that the 2 most frequently called numbers are Greg's and Becky's, and now they have to go interview Greg and Becky, and that's a very difficult thing for these students to do, especially Greg. He was really tough. He asked for his attorney, and he wouldn't tell them anything, and he was tough. So interviewing, report writing, writing search warrants, writing subpoenas, collecting evidence, these are all things that we do in real life, and they're going to be more confident when they do it in real life. So the last photograph, this is my class. Johnny, he's been resurrected. I bring him back for the last class, and I sit him in the front row, which freaks them out. But you can see how happy they are. They're really excited to get it done with, and they were taking selfies with Johnny. But they learned a lot, and really, I would put some of these students up to some of my colleagues that worked, who were not very good, right? And they're able to do this. So it's a great exercise, and if you ever need help or if you ever need any suggestions, let me know. It's a lot of work, but once you get the work done, it's really fun to continue the problem. Yes?
Do most of the groups eventually figure it out?
Yes, all of them figured out and got the evidence, but they did it in different ways, and they did it at different speeds.
That's good for them to know too.
Yes. Yeah, and they were worried. Some groups were very, very worried. And I was worried that they weren't going to solve it. So I grade it by a rubric, which is a really easy way to do that. I keep track of their investigative techniques, and then I also grade their written report and how they present, and that comes together as their grade. But a lot of them were worried, but they all identified Greg. One group got so excited that they identified Greg, they actually wanted to get handcuffs and arrest him. And I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. And I told Greg, and he was like, no, we're not going to do that. I said, you cannot arrest Greg. So they really got into it. One other thing really quickly, one of the students saw one of those textbooks and found out that it wasn't being used here at Lakeland, but searched other colleges and found out that one textbook was being used in a computer science class at John Carroll, and asked if they could interview the instructor at John Carroll. I'm like, no, you can't, right? That wasn't part. So they're finding things that I didn't put in there, which is good, because that's what we do. In a real investigation, we're just trying a million different things, hoping we can identify someone like Greg, who is just diabolical killer. Next semester, it's going to be Becky is the killer, and in real life, I think Becky would not get caught at all. I don't know what you think, but I would be scared to go after her. But she's going to be the killer for that one, and it's a different scenario and some different evidence. So, any more questions? Yes, Barry.
Kind of compete against, see it as a competition.
Yes, yeah, and they're told not to talk. That if they talk, they're going to ruin it, and for their grade. That it is a competition, and it was a pretty steep competition, and I think they didn't collaborate because everybody did it differently. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Thank you for your time.